Welcome back to our channel. Today we're taking a closer look at a series of small but revealing moments inside the Bates family that, when viewed together, begin to tell a much bigger story. On their own, these updates might seem ordinary, a birthday post, a short parenting clip, a casual comment, but the way each one has been received is what's drawing attention. Because the reactions are noticeably different, and that difference is exactly what people online are starting to question. To understand why these moments are being analyzed so closely, we need to look at the timing. Recently, the family has been under increased public attention, with ongoing discussions surrounding their image, relationships, and how they present themselves across social media. In that kind of environment, even the most routine content doesn't stay simple for long. Every post becomes part of a larger narrative, whether intended or not. That's why the latest updates involving Lydia Bates, Josie Bates, and Lawson Bates have quickly become part of a wider conversation. Not because they are dramatic, but because of how differently each situation is being interpreted. Starting with Lydia, her recent birthday post followed a tone that feels very familiar within the family's online presence. Calm, reflective, and centered on gratitude. In her caption, she shared that even though she sometimes still feels young, she wouldn't change anything about her current life, emphasizing how thankful she is for her husband and their children. She described her life as something that continues to get sweeter and sweeter, ending with a sense of anticipation for what the next year might bring. It's the kind of message that aligns seamlessly with the family's image, where stability, faith, and contentment are consistently highlighted. However, what made this moment stand out was not the caption itself, but the response it received from within the family. Kelly Jo Bates did not respond with a brief birthday greeting. Instead, she shared a long and carefully worded tribute that emphasized Lydia's character, her calm nature, and her dedication both within her home and in her broader life. The message drew on faith-based language and framed Lydia as someone who reflects deeply valued qualities, presenting her as more than just a loved family member. At the same time, Trace Bates echoed that same tone in his own message, expressing appreciation in a way that reinforced the idea that Lydia is not only important to him personally, but also represents something meaningful within the family structure. When those responses are considered together, the tone shifts from simple celebration to something more defined. Lydia is not just being acknowledged, she is being highlighted. The language used, the length of the tribute, and the consistency in how she is described all contribute to the impression that she is being positioned as an example of what the family values most. It's subtle, but it's noticeable, especially when placed next to the reactions other members are receiving. That contrast becomes clearer when the focus moves to Josie Bates, where the reaction is far less unified. A Reddit discussion that gained traction, often summarized under a title like Josie's Kids' Dinner, immediately framed the conversation in a more critical light. The discussion centered on a short clip she shared during a road trip, where she casually presented a small meal for her daughters as a girls' dinner. The content itself was simple and practical, but the interpretation quickly expanded beyond what was shown. Some viewers focused on the portion size, questioning whether it seemed appropriate for what was being described as a meal, while others interpreted the moment more broadly, suggesting that when content appears consistently polished, even small details begin to feel intentional rather than incidental. At the same time, there were clear voices pushing back against the criticism, arguing that feeding children in a moving car often requires compromise, and that smaller portions can be a practical choice rather than a concerning one. Despite that pushback, the discussion didn't settle into a single viewpoint and instead continued to grow as more people weighed in. What stands out here is not just the disagreement, but the level of attention given to such a small moment. Compared to Lydia's post, which was met with steady and consistent praise, Josie's clip became the subject of ongoing analysis. Every detail was considered, every interpretation debated, and the conversation extended far beyond the original context. This difference highlights how perception shapes reaction, especially when expectations around someone's image are already established. Then there's Lawson, whose situation introduces a different type of response, but still fits within the same overall pattern. A Reddit thread commonly framed as Lawson feeling the FOMO captured the tone of the discussion almost immediately, setting the context for how his comment would be interpreted. The comment itself was brief, mentioning that he would join a similar event in the future, and on its own, it reads as casual and lighthearted. However, the reaction it received shifted the meaning significantly. Instead of being taken at face value, the comment was interpreted by many as an example of wanting to stay included, particularly in moments where other family members are already gaining attention or visibility. The idea of FOMO, or fear of missing out, became central to the discussion, with some suggesting that the comment reflected a desire to remain relevant rather than genuine interest in the event itself. Others offered a more neutral perspective, pointing out that expressing interest in something is a normal reaction and does not necessarily carry deeper meaning. Even so, the dominant tone remained focused on interpretation rather than intention. When you look at these three situations together, the pattern becomes easier to recognize. Lydia's moment is reinforced with strong and consistent praise, aligning her closely with the family's image. Josie's content, while simple and practical, becomes the subject of detailed scrutiny and mixed reactions. Lawson's comment, despite being brief and informal, is interpreted through assumptions about relevance and motivation. These are very different responses to moments that, on their own, are relatively minor. What makes this more significant is how quietly this pattern exists. There are no direct comparisons being made by the family, no public acknowledgement of any imbalance, and no visible tension between members. Instead, everything is communicated indirectly through tone, emphasis, and reaction. Over time, those differences begin to form a structure that people naturally start to recognize, even if it is never openly defined. At the same time, this dynamic reflects how public perception operates in a space where personal life and content are constantly overlapping. Every post contributes to a broader narrative, and once that narrative begins to shift, even small details can take on added meaning. Those who align closely with the expected image tend to be reinforced, while those who appear more curated or less clearly positioned may face increased scrutiny or interpretation. This is why these moments matter. They are not just about a birthday, a meal, or a comment. They are indicators of how perception is shaped and reinforced over time. When similar patterns continue to appear, they begin to look less like coincidence and more like a system. One where praise, criticism, and attention are distributed unevenly based on alignment with expectations. Looking ahead, the question is not whether these reactions are happening, but what they mean moving forward. Will Lydia continue to be positioned as the most aligned figure within the family's image, or will that level of attention create new expectations? Will Josie's presence remain stable despite ongoing scrutiny, or will repeated analysis begin to shift how she is perceived? And for Lawson, will the current narrative around FOMO fade over time, or will it continue to shape how his actions are interpreted? These are the questions that are now driving the conversation, because if there is one thing that has become clear, it is that the reactions are not the same, and that difference is what people are paying attention to. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you see this as a pattern, or just normal social media behavior being interpreted more deeply than it should be? I read every single comment, and your perspective always adds something new to the conversation. And if you want more breakdowns like this, don't forget to subscribe.